Kawasaki's CEO, Yasuhiko Hashimoto, has detonated a seismic shift in the motorcycle industry with a bold, strategic announcement that redefines the brand's trajectory and shakes the very core of what motorcycling means in the 21st century. The revelation wasn't merely a product launch or a subtle nudge toward innovation. It was a full-throttle leap into a new era, signaling an irreversible break from tradition and sending shockwaves across every major motorcycle manufacturer, supplier, and enthusiast community worldwide. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The stage had been set at a much-anticipated global industry event, where attendees expected perhaps a new update to the popular Ninja lineup, or maybe a refined tweak to Kawasaki's already impressive hybrid initiatives. But what Hashimoto unveiled exceeded even the wildest speculations. Kawasaki would be transitioning its entire motorcycle lineup to a zero-emissions platform within a tightly defined timeline. This wasn't a gradual move. This wasn't an experimental phase. This was a decisive, unflinching commitment to sustainability, electrification, and an entirely new vision of performance and identity. Hashimoto announced that Kawasaki would halt development of new internal combustion engine ICE motorcycles beyond a handful of legacy models already in production. Instead, the brand would channel the bulk of its resources, engineering prowess, and manufacturing capabilities toward full electrification and the rapid scaling of hydrogen-powered prototypes. What truly stunned observers, however, was not just the commitment to electric and hydrogen technology. It was the speed and scale at which the transformation was to occur. Kawasaki would phase out most new ICE-powered bikes within the next 3 years, effectively ceasing their creation for the consumer market, except for regions where transition strategies required longer lead times due to infrastructure limitations. This move tore through the foundational assumptions of the global motorcycle industry. Kawasaki wasn't merely adapting to the market, it was reshaping it. For decades, motorcycle culture has been inextricably tied to the visceral thrill of combustion engines. The roar, the vibration, the mechanical purity of throttle and torque. With Hashimoto's announcement, Kawasaki declared that the future of that thrill didn't lie in fuel and fire, but in silence, precision, and high-efficiency propulsion. It was a philosophical pivot as much as it was a technical or business decision. For context, Kawasaki has never been a stranger to innovation. From pioneering the supercharged Ninja H2 line to launching early hybrid motorcycles and committing resources to hydrogen research, the company has often occupied a forward-looking niche in the motorcycle market. But until now, those efforts were viewed as intriguing side bets rather than the central game plan. Hashimoto turned that dynamic inside out, announcing that Kawasaki's research division had achieved breakthrough efficiencies in solid-state battery integration, allowing for lighter, more compact electric motorcycles with performance metrics that rivaled and in some areas exceeded their ICE counterparts. The announcement also included the revelation that Kawasaki had quietly developed a modular electric drivetrain platform that would serve as the foundation for an entire range of motorcycles. From lightweight urban commuters to full-size sport bikes and adventure tourers, each model would be built around this modular core, allowing for scalable manufacturing, streamlined servicing, and easier technological upgrades over time. The brilliance of this approach lies in its versatility. It opens the door to mass production without compromising on the performance profiles that different segments demand. Equally daring was Kawasaki's unveiling of a hydrogen-powered concept motorcycle, a machine that looked like it had ridden straight out of a sci-fi film, with a cylindrical hydrogen storage unit embedded where a traditional gas tank might be, and heat venting systems designed for efficiency and safety. Though still in prototype stage, this hydrogen platform signaled Kawasaki's commitment to providing an alternative to battery-powered EVs, especially for regions where fast-charging infrastructure remains sparse or unreliable. Yasuhiko Hashimoto made it clear that Kawasaki wasn't simply reacting to global environmental pressure or regulatory shifts. This was a proactive, ambitious repositioning of the brand. The company had mapped out consumer behavior trends, climate data projections, and urban infrastructure evolutions. The result? A conviction that the traditional motorcycle market was nearing an inflection point. According to Hashimoto, electrification isn't a compromise. It's a gateway to new kinds of riding experiences and engineering creativity. As the details of the announcement spread, the implications began to crystallize. Kawasaki's dealer networks would be retooled to accommodate electric and hydrogen servicing capabilities, with investments earmarked for technician training and specialized diagnostic equipment. Software would become as critical to the riding experience as suspension tuning. With over-the-air updates, ride customization apps, and safety enhancements forming part of the ownership ecosystem. Motorcycle security, theft prevention, and accident response systems would evolve, integrated deeply with cloud infrastructure and real-time connectivity. Perhaps the most radical component of the announcement was how Kawasaki planned to manage the transition from legacy ICE models to their new electric counterparts. Rather than treating it as a cold discontinuation, Hashimoto unveiled a trade-in and retrofit initiative unlike anything seen in the industry. Owners of certain popular ICE models would be given the option to have their motorcycles retrofitted with electric drivetrains, essentially breathing new life into their beloved machines while aligning them with environmental mandates. It was a nod to the emotional connection riders have with their bikes, blended with a technologically savvy pathway to modernization. Hashimoto's announcement was not limited to product and strategy. It also extended deep into the supply chain. Kawasaki would be overhauling its materials sourcing protocols to ensure ethical and sustainable extraction of the rare earth elements needed for battery production. The brand had already initiated strategic partnerships with battery recycling firms and had invested in vertical integration opportunities to reduce reliance on volatile overseas supply chains. It was a comprehensive plan that addressed the elephant in the room, the environmental and geopolitical cost of battery electrification. Even the branding language used by Hashimoto emphasized transformation over transition. Kawasaki was not becoming an electric motorcycle company, it was becoming a mobility innovation brand. That subtle but profound shift indicated future diversification into areas like autonomous two-wheel technology, smart city mobility solutions, and even aerial transportation. It hinted that the motorcycle as we know it would evolve not only in powertrain, but in purpose. From hobbyist icon to integral part of sustainable urban planning, the motorcycle's role in society was being reimagined. While many motorcycle companies have flirted with electric bikes, often hesitantly, Kawasaki's move was an unambiguous statement of dominance and leadership. This wasn't the hesitant rollout of a single e-motorcycle hidden in the back of a showroom. This was a full-scale restructuring of Kawasaki's business model, signaling to competitors that the combustion-based arms race had ended, and a new technological competition was beginning. The ramifications for the industry were immediate and immense. Rival brands would now be forced to reconsider their own electrification timelines, their legacy commitments, and their consumer engagement strategies. Racing series, enthusiast communities, tuning shops, and even motorcycle licensing and regulation bodies would need to adapt to the new landscape Kawasaki had just forged with a single announcement. Investment in charging networks would accelerate. Battery innovation would receive increased funding. And perhaps most importantly, the public's perception of what a motorcycle is and what it can be would begin to shift. For the consumer, Kawasaki's bold new direction meant more than just environmental stewardship, it meant performance reimagined. With electric drivetrains delivering instant torque and high-precision control systems, riders could look forward to a new kind of power curve. One that didn't rumble to life but surged instantly, silently, and effortlessly. Advanced traction systems, regenerative braking, and smart adaptive suspension would further elevate ride quality and safety. In short, electric motorcycles would no longer be seen as fringe alternatives, but as desirable upgrades. Hashimoto's leadership in orchestrating this transformation cannot be overstated. Rather than merely responding to boardroom directives or public relations pressure, he appeared to be driven by a deep-seated belief in Kawasaki's capacity to lead. His strategic alignment of engineering, environmental responsibility, and consumer sentiment marked him as one of the few executives in the automotive space willing to make high-stakes decisions based on vision rather than inertia. The timing was especially critical. As global governments intensify carbon neutrality targets and cities restrict ICE vehicle access, Kawasaki's announcement positioned it ahead of the regulatory curve. Instead of being caught flat-footed by legislation, the company could now serve as a strategic partner to municipalities, infrastructure providers, and green energy companies. Hashimoto understood that the future of motorcycles wasn't just about vehicles, it was about ecosystems, data networks, and interoperability. Notably absent from the announcement was any form of apology for the departure from combustion. Hashimoto didn't treat the transition as something mournful or reluctant. There was no nostalgic farewell. Instead, it was a triumphant unveiling of what comes next, a celebration of what motorcycles could be when freed from the constraints of fossil fuels. It was the language of opportunity, not compromise. For motorcycle enthusiasts, the announcement sparked immediate debates. Would electric motorcycles ever truly replace the emotional connection forged through combustion? Could a whisper-quiet ride deliver the same adrenaline as a screaming inline four? Kawasaki's answer was clear. Not only could it, but it would. The brand promised innovations in auditory simulation, dynamic feedback systems, and new haptic technologies to recreate and even enhance sensory cues that ice bikes provided. In other words, Kawasaki wasn't abandoning the thrill, it was upgrading it. Kawasaki's engineering teams had also quietly developed a proprietary fast-charging system that minimized downtime and maximized range, reducing one of the largest barriers to electric motorcycle adoption. Integration with renewable energy grids, solar charging stations, and even kinetic charging pads hinted at a future where a motorcycle might not only be green in use, but green in its entire life cycle. Hashimoto's announcement was not simply about new motorcycles, it was about redefining the soul of Kawasaki. It was about claiming a leadership role in a revolution that was happening with or without them. But instead of trailing behind, Kawasaki chose to lead. It chose to abandon the safety of tradition in favor of a risky, visionary leap forward. And in doing so, it lit a fire under the rest of the motorcycle industry, daring every other manufacturer to either rise to the challenge or risk irrelevance. Kawasaki's thunderous pivot under Yasuhiko Hashimoto did more than disrupt the marketplace. It fractured the very foundation of how manufacturers approach innovation, heritage, and future planning. After the initial shock settled, what became increasingly clear was that Kawasaki was not just responding to trends, it was positioning itself to define them. Hashimoto's move dismantled the idea that motorcycle companies must choose between performance and progress, legacy and leadership, or thrill and technology. Kawasaki was now crafting a new template where these ideas could coexist without compromise. One of the most groundbreaking aspects of this announcement was Kawasaki's approach to design philosophy. Where the industry had largely treated electrification as an awkward extension of traditional models, often retrofitting existing frames or tacking on electric motors to gas-era designs, Kawasaki was throwing the old design playbook out entirely. Instead of retro-engineering, the company was reimagining motorcycles from the ground up, starting not with the limitations of existing platforms, but with the limitless potential of clean-sheet thinking. This gave designers and engineers complete freedom to innovate with mass distribution, center of gravity, cooling systems, and body dynamics. Rather than merely adapting electric components to motorcycle frames, Kawasaki began sculpting new machines that used the properties of electric and hydrogen power to enhance form and function. Cooling ducts were reimagined, not for air intake, but for battery heat dissipation. The traditional gas tank hump became a housing for modular power units or hydrogen cells. Weight distribution was recalibrated entirely, allowing for previously impossible handling characteristics, especially in high-performance scenarios. In many cases, the bikes were lighter and more agile than their gas-powered predecessors, defying the stereotype of heavy, sluggish electric motorcycles. The integration of artificial intelligence into the rider interface was another leap forward. Kawasaki's new lineup would feature embedded AI systems capable of learning rider preferences, adapting performance curves in real time, and offering intelligent navigation based on terrain, charge levels, and even traffic conditions. These AI assistants weren't gimmicks. They were co-pilots, capable of dynamic ride coaching, safety interventions, and long-term diagnostics. Over time, the motorcycles would learn from the rider's habits, making subtle adjustments to throttle response, suspension settings, and regenerative braking to optimize comfort, efficiency, and performance. Hashimoto's vision extended far beyond the individual rider. Kawasaki's ecosystem strategy showed signs of deep integration with smart cities, IoT platforms, and vehicle-to-everything V2X communication protocols. Motorcycles were now envisioned as intelligent nodes within a larger digital infrastructure, communicating with traffic lights, ride-sharing systems, emergency services, and even public charging networks. Through this lens, the electric motorcycle became not just a transport vehicle, but a data-rich mobility device. Cities could leverage Kawasaki's bikes for real-time traffic flow analysis, air quality tracking, and infrastructure efficiency, marking a shift from mere personal freedom to collective benefit. Kawasaki's hydrogen initiative was equally ambitious, carving out a parallel future that diverged from battery dependency. The company revealed that it had developed a proprietary high-pressure hydrogen containment unit that minimized weight while maximizing safety and energy density. This allowed for long-range performance and rapid refueling times, two critical areas where traditional EVs often lag. What set this technology apart wasn't just its novelty, but Kawasaki's commitment to building an entire ecosystem around it. The company announced partnerships with fueling station developers, energy providers, and urban planning councils to pilot hydrogen infrastructure in key markets. Perhaps more provocative was the social dimension of Hashimoto's vision. He acknowledged that motorcycling had historically been a symbol of rebellion, personal identity, and individualism. The fear among purists was that electrification would sterilize that ethos. But Kawasaki's rebranding of electric performance as a new rebellion, a forward-looking defiance of stagnation and environmental neglect, reframed the entire conversation. Riding an electric or hydrogen-powered motorcycle wasn't a concession to progress. It was a bold declaration of what freedom looked like in an era defined by climate urgency. Kawasaki also revealed plans to launch an entire sub-brand focused exclusively on youth and entry-level riders, built around the new electric platform. This wasn't merely a nod to market expansion. It was a strategic effort to seed loyalty in the next generation of motorcyclists. These lightweight electric bikes would feature gamified ride experiences, augmented reality heads-up displays, and customizable performance modes accessible via smartphone apps. Young riders could tune their bike's behavior as easily as changing a playlist, making the riding experience more interactive, intuitive, and social. The economic dimension of Hashimoto's strategy was just as radical. By vertically integrating its supply chain and investing in domestic battery production facilities, Kawasaki aimed to insulate itself from the volatile price swings of raw materials like lithium and cobalt. This meant that while other manufacturers might struggle with affordability and profit margins in an electric future, Kawasaki could maintain price competitiveness without compromising quality. Moreover, the company's shift to modular electric platforms allowed for manufacturing efficiency on a scale previously unseen in the two-wheeled world, with shared components cutting costs across multiple product lines. To ensure the longevity and sustainability of its transformation, Kawasaki outlined a robust circular economy model. Every electric motorcycle would be designed with end-of-life recycling in mind. Battery packs would be swappable, repairable, and reclaimable. Old power units could be repurposed into home energy storage devices or grid backups. Even fairings and structural components would use biodegradable composites or recyclable metals. Hashimoto wasn't just announcing a new generation of motorcycles, he was building a blueprint for industrial responsibility. Dealerships, often overlooked in radical pivots, were given a clear roadmap. Far from being left behind, Kawasaki's dealer partners were promised exclusive access to new service platforms, e-learning tools for technicians, and franchise grants for setting up specialized electric servicing bays. Service models would become more software-centric, with predictive diagnostics allowing dealerships to contact riders before a breakdown ever occurred. The aftermarket industry, too, would benefit from new standards and APIs that allowed third-party developers to build apps, add-ons, and smart accessories compatible with Kawasaki's ecosystem. Beyond the physical and digital transformation, there was a cultural pivot unfolding. Kawasaki was investing in narrative, not just machines. Through a series of planned media campaigns, branded documentary projects, and immersive VR experiences, the brand would reintroduce itself to the world, not as a relic of old-school adrenaline, but as a steward of futuristic thrill. Riders would no longer be defined solely by their machines, but by the experiences and values those machines enabled. Kawasaki wanted to own not just the next generation of motorcycles, but the next generation of motorcyclists. Even racing, often the final bastion of gas-powered glory, was reimagined in Kawasaki's post-announcement world. Hashimoto teased the formation of an all-electric racing league, designed not to replicate the sound and fury of MotoGP, but to chart a new path entirely. These electric race bikes would prioritize acceleration, agility, and smart telemetry over raw decibels. Races would be data-driven spectacles, with fans interacting in real time, accessing rider biometrics, and even influencing track conditions through gamified engagement platforms. Kawasaki was engineering not just machines, but an entirely new motorsport culture. Kawasaki's supply partners, long accustomed to the predictable cycles of combustion-era manufacturing, were also thrust into transformation. The company announced a supplier transition program, providing financial incentives and R&D support to help legacy part manufacturers retool for electric components. This included everything from regenerative braking systems to lightweight frame alloys and heat-optimized fairings. The goal wasn't to leave suppliers behind, but to elevate them into the future, ensuring that Kawasaki's rise pulled its entire network upward. Hashimoto's announcement also contained geopolitical ramifications, with countries around the world offering green energy subsidies, EV tax breaks, and infrastructure grants. Kawasaki positioned itself as a key partner in national electrification strategies. The company's early commitment made it eligible for favorable trade terms, expedited approvals, and joint R&D funding. In an increasingly protectionist world, Kawasaki's agility and foresight gave it the kind of international leverage few motorcycle companies could dream of. The insurance industry, too, would need to respond. Kawasaki's new machines, with their embedded AI safety protocols, automated collision alerts, and rider monitoring systems, promised drastically lower accident rates. This shift would force insurers to reconsider premium structures, risk assessment models, and service bundling. Kawasaki could even begin offering its own insurance packages bundled with purchase, leveraging ride data to create personalized plans that rewarded safe, efficient riding. At the heart of all this lay a redefinition of power itself. In the old world, power was mechanical, generated through pistons, displacement, and combustion. In Kawasaki's new world, power was intelligent, measured in response time, system integration, and sensory richness. Riders could no longer judge performance purely by engine size or top-end speed. They would now consider acceleration curves, range optimization, digital tuning, and ecosystem connectivity. This wasn't just a shift in machinery, it was a shift in mindset. Hashimoto's announcement didn't come in a vacuum. It emerged at a moment when the entire automotive landscape was convulsing, pivoting, and stumbling toward uncertain futures. While many manufacturers hesitated, tethered to legacy platforms, hesitant consumer bases, and fragmented policy environments, Kawasaki sprinted into the breach. It did so not with recklessness, but with calculation. Every element of the announcement, from AI-driven diagnostics to hydrogen fueling infrastructure, was backed by years of research and an uncompromising clarity of vision. As the announcement closed, it was obvious to everyone that something irreversible had occurred. Kawasaki had detonated the idea that electrification was a slow, uncertain evolution. It had shown the world that a motorcycle company could be more than a builder of bikes. It could be a leader in climate stewardship, technological excellence, and cultural reinvention. Yasuhiko Hashimoto didn't just make an announcement. He changed the trajectory of an entire industry. What Kawasaki had done wasn't just build the future. It had dared the world to catch up. Kawasaki's unprecedented declaration under Yasuhiko Hashimoto's leadership had not only redrawn the competitive boundaries within the motorcycle industry, it effectively obliterated them. Every detail of the announcement exposed an astonishingly layered strategy that transcended the typical concerns of product development and market capture. This wasn't about dominating in sales figures or outselling a rival. It was about rewriting the very identity of what a motorcycle company could be, down to the marrow of its business model, corporate philosophy, and social contract. One of the less obvious but profoundly influential outcomes of this announcement was its catalytic impact on industry regulation and lobbying. Historically, motorcycle manufacturers have been wary of government entanglement, often pushing back against restrictive emissions policies and urban congestion mandates. But Kawasaki's new stance flipped this dynamic. Now, rather than being on the defensive, it positioned itself as a proactive collaborator with environmental agencies, urban planners, and legislative bodies. By taking such a bold step ahead of impending regulations, Kawasaki gained a seat at the policy-making table, able to help shape the standards that others would be forced to follow. Kawasaki's government relations team had reportedly been working behind the scenes in several key markets, including the European Union, Japan, and select US states, to align their upcoming fleet with transportation and sustainability goals. These efforts weren't just about compliance, they were strategic partnerships. Kawasaki offered to pilot government-backed urban mobility programs using its electric scooters and bikes, leveraging its data collection capabilities to help cities analyze traffic patterns, energy efficiency, and even pedestrian flow. This positioned the company as an essential civic partner, not just a vendor of consumer products. In a similar vein, the company's educational and workforce initiatives were set to break entirely new ground. Recognizing that an electric future would require new technical skill sets, Kawasaki announced the creation of an internal electric mobility institute. This wouldn't be limited to training Kawasaki employees, it would be a certification hub for the broader industry. Mechanics, engineers, software developers, and even sales professionals could enroll in a structured program designed to equip them with knowledge in electric drivetrains, AI-assisted maintenance, battery diagnostics, hydrogen safety protocols, and more. The company was effectively building a new professional class, an entire workforce trained in skills that had barely existed 5 years prior. This forward-thinking approach extended into academia as well. Kawasaki revealed ongoing partnerships with universities, research labs, and technical colleges in a bid to secure not just future talent, but also to foster innovation through collaborative research. Students would be granted access to Kawasaki's test data, vehicle telemetry, and simulation environments, giving rise to cross-disciplinary projects ranging from human-machine interface design to energy storage modeling. In doing so, Kawasaki seeded the future not only of its own brand, but of the mobility sector itself. The brand's retail strategy also received a futuristic overhaul. Kawasaki would be phasing in experience centers, multi-use retail environments that offered much more than just a showroom. These spaces would include electric test ride simulators, immersive VR racing experiences, tear-down bays for customers to learn about electric drivetrains firsthand, and AI-configured build stations, allowing buyers to customize everything from performance mapping to digital interfaces. This wasn't retail in the traditional sense, it was experiential evangelism designed to convert skeptics into lifelong adopters through tactile engagement. On the digital side, Kawasaki planned to integrate its entire ecosystem into a singular user interface called K-Cloud. Through this platform, riders could access real-time performance data, initiate remote diagnostics, plan routes with optimized charging stops, and even participate in rider communities segmented by geography, skill level, and riding interest. Each motorcycle would be a connected device within this ecosystem, always in sync with both its user and the brand. K-Cloud would also enable Kawasaki to push firmware updates, recalibrate safety settings based on local laws, and manage energy consumption more efficiently based on the user's habits and surroundings. This shift toward connectivity wasn't just about convenience, it had significant implications for safety. Every new Kawasaki electric bike would feature real-time telemetry communication with a cloud-based safety AI. This system could detect anomalies in traction, acceleration, or braking patterns and intervene when necessary, either by notifying the rider or taking temporary control to avert disaster. Collision avoidance, lane detection, and even blind spot warnings would now be standard across the lineup. This didn't just change the riding experience, it redefined the very risk profile of motorcycling. Kawasaki also intended to recalibrate the economics of ownership. Historically, motorcycles have been seen as high-maintenance machines, requiring regular servicing, part replacements, and careful upkeep. With electric drivetrains, however, Kawasaki drastically reduced the number of moving parts and consumables. Oil changes, spark plugs, and timing chains became things of the past. Braking systems used regenerative deceleration, minimizing pad wear. Battery health would be monitored constantly, and predictive maintenance would notify users well before any degradation occurred. This not only made ownership more affordable, but made it far more accessible for younger or less mechanically inclined riders. Accessibility also extended to financing and insurance. Kawasaki introduced the concept of ride-as-a-service subscriptions. Instead of purchasing a bike outright, customers could subscribe to a monthly plan that covered the motorcycle, its insurance, software updates, and even routine maintenance. This model dramatically lowered the barrier to entry and provided a worry-free ownership experience. It also allowed Kawasaki to maintain closer, longer-term relationships with its customer base, feeding valuable user data back into its development pipeline. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Kawasaki's shocking move shaking up the motorcycle market? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.